So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, guys, based on the time zones you all are coming from. So guys, before we start with our today's session, can you all please give me a quick confirmation if you all can see my screen and hear me loud and clear? Please give me a quick confirmation, guys, so that I can be assured that you all are able to hear me loud and clear and see the screen as well. Wonderful. Thank you so much for confirming, guys. Perfect. So let me start by introducing myself, guys. So my name is Neeraj Kheria, and I have been active in this IT industry for almost 10 years now. So I started my career working as a UI designer. That means I had started my career designing the interfaces, both of front end and back end for different applications. So I was working mainly almost we can say 80% for enterprise dashboards for enterprise applications and 20% for commercial applications, right? And then I moved on into leading teams, into global teams, into developing the applications, into making sure that they meet the UX standards, the user experience standards, and also marketing it through digital channels across globe. So mainly I have been actively involved into different industries based in India, US, Canada, Singapore, and other Southeast Asian markets so far. And in terms of the training part, I have been actively involved as a corporate trainer, working as a corporate trainer, giving training to different companies across entire globe, both for design, development, and marketing. Right. So that's what I have been doing. I have been actively working on since almost now 10 years. And before we start with the session, guys, our main motto of this entire session is to make it as interactive as possible, right? So in case you have any questions, you have any doubts on whatever we will be discussing in our journey for next 90 minutes, please feel free to ask as many questions as you want, right? Don't hesitate, don't think, okay, whether you should ask it or not. Just please feel free to ask as many questions as you want, right? Because if we have some unanswered questions, again, it will be more confusing for us as we continue forward. All right. So please feel free to ask as many questions as you want, and I'll make sure that each of your queries are answered one by one. All right. Exactly, because we'll be working on, so as we continue forward, we'll be also working on the practical part as well. That means whatever we'll be learning during that session, we'll be also doing a hands-on on it as well, so that it becomes really clear for every one of us. Perfect. Okay, Johnson says cannot hear you. Johnson, I think you might need to restart your audio or your AV service. Kindly restart your your session so it might resolve any AV issue. Any AV issues, Johnson? All right, so let's get started. Now, today we have gathered on our discussion on MySQL. So the agenda for today's session would be to discuss what exactly we mean by database and what is DBMS, which is called as Database Management System. Then we'll discuss on structured query language, how we can communicate with a database using a structured query language, that is SQL. So SQL stands for structured query language itself. How we can communicate with any database, how we can change, how we can add some data to some database, how we can fetch the data as well, how we can make changes into any kind of database that we are using to store our data, right? Then we'll discuss on MySQL and MySQL Workbench, what exactly they are, where they're used, and how we have to use it. Then we'll discuss the entity relationship diagram to understand the exact relationship between different entities and using the particular diagram itself, right? Then we'll discuss the concepts of normalization, and then we'll end our session with SQL operations and commands. That means how we can execute different functionalities in order to communicate with the database that we have created. All right. So we'll be continuing in the same structure for today's session. All right. Okay, I have a query from someone. Okay, I have a query from Harshvardhan. So for practical, we need to install any setup. Yes, Harshvardhan, we do need that. And we'll be discussing as we continue further what exactly we need in order to get started. So for that part, we do have the workbench that we need to set up. I'll just guide you all on how to get started on doing the setup as well. Clear on this part, Harshvardhan? Please give me a quick confirmation. I'll be guiding on how to get started on performing this entire setup. All right, perfect. Thank you for confirming. All right, guys. So before now, let's first understand what exactly we mean by data, right? Now, for example, let's say we are running an institute. We are working with almost over 1,000 or over 10,000 employees, over 500 employees in any company, right? Where we have enormous amount of data, right? For example, as we can see on screen, we have data, we have name for different individuals. We have Jessica, Dan, Gwen, Bob, Stacy, Dexter, Cassie, Annie, Jesse. So we have multiple data sets, right? We have information for every student out there, and these are not just names. Now they can be a name, they can be first name, last name, age, there's the unique identifier number, their address, their parents name. There can be unlimited number of data set that we can have for each and every individual, right? And that's why if we have to describe data, then data in simple words is simply the collection of information, right? Collection of information or facts. Now, as we know, information and facts, these are two different things. So we can say a collection of information or facts related to any particular scenario or entity, right? That's exactly what we mean by data. And when we have enormous amount of data stored in a single location, then that's what exactly we mean by database, right? For example, here we can have multiple database. For example, in one database, we are storing information about the students, about the students, students information, right? In second database, we are maintaining information about their marks. In third database, we are storing information about their parents or about our employees, right? So we can have so for any use case, we can have multiple databases exactly as per our requirement. All right. Okay, guys, can you all please give me a quick confirmation if you all are able to hear me loud and clear? Ajit says, lost your voice. Everyone, can you all please give me a quick confirmation if you all are able to hear me loud and clear? Wonderful. Thank you so much for the confirmation, guys. So try rejoining Ajit. It might resolve any AV issues you are facing. It might be because of the network issues, guys. So in case you feel any kind of disturbances in the voice or video, kindly try restarting your services, and that might resolve the issue. All right. And thank you again for confirming, everyone. All right. Next is we have database management system. So first of all, clear on the concept of database. Everyone, please give me a quick information. What exactly we mean by database? Wonderful. Thank you so much for confirming, guys. Next is we have database management system called as DBMS. Database management system, DBMS. You may have seen, heard, and came through this particular term multiple times if you have been working in development, right? So what exactly DBMS is? DBMS is simply a collection. DBMS is simply a collection of programs. That means it's simply a collection of programs which enables the users to access database, manipulate data, and represent data, right? That means let's suppose when we have stored any information in any database, then we can manipulate it. That means if we want to add some more data, we can do that. If we want to delete some data, again, we can do that. If we want to edit, we want to add some columns, we want to remove some columns, we want to remove or edit or change any data, then that is quite possible through a DBMS, that means database management system. Exactly, others. So place where a lot of data is, right? So exactly the system through which we can manipulate, we can access the data, and then we can manipulate it as well as per our requirement, right? And it's simply a technology to store, retrieve the data with utmost efficiency along with security measures. Now, security is also an essential part of DBMS because when we are storing any data, now we don't want that data to be accessed by anyone, right? Let's suppose we have some confidential information about the students, about our customers, about our users. Now we don't want that particular piece of information to be shared, to be going in wrong hands, right? Or in any hands, even though right hands, we don't want that, right? Then we can apply some security measures that that database access is limited to only the people that we have granted the access to, right? And then we have multiple encryption techniques as well. When we say encryption, we mean we can encrypt. That means we can convert the data into a secured format, and then if and which will be only decrypted. That means it can only be converted into understandable language only by us, so that even though someone gets their hands on a data, they will not be able to even read what exactly it is, right? We'll discuss these technical parts as we continue further in our session. All right. All right, guys. Next is we have the different type of DBMS. We have different type of database management systems, right? First of all, we have hierarchical DBMS. That means basically, it's simply the same concept of parent and child for storing different data, right? For example, we have a single data, and again, then we have subdivided this into multiple database, into multiple versions. Then we store this into as in hierarchical, right? Like we must have seen multiple hierarchy data, right? So there we can store as a part of hierarchical DBMS, right? Then we have network DBMS. So network is basically when we have when it supports multiple relations, right? That means if a same branch has to be divided into multiple things, then we can use multiple network network DBMS. All right. Same way we have relation. So now this type of database is actually used to define relationship between in the format of tables, also known as relations, right? So for example, if we have a bit of complicated data, like we want to maintain some kind of relationship between different tables, then we can use this kind of relational databases, right? And then we have object-oriented DBMS. That means here we are supporting new data types, right? That means some kind of new data types can also be stored using this particular object-oriented DBMS. We can do that. All right. Now, for example, let me show you some basic example using some diagram here so that we can have a better understanding of the entire concept for these parts. So for example, if we talk about network DBMS. Let me show you a simple figure for network DBMS. And then we have network, then we have hierarchical data DBMS. Then we have relational. So let me just show you a simple sample, guys, so that it can be clear, because once we see anything that we see visually gets stored into our system more for a longer period of time, right? So you can see the exact example of what exactly we mean by these different database types. Just a moment. Relational DBMS. All right. So now if we talk about relational, first of all, we do have networks, we do have network DBMS, right? Now, first of all, we had discussed on hierarchical. That means if you're talking about hierarchical DBMS, then hierarchical is basically once we have a root command or root data type, then we have multiple, when we have multiple divisions in terms of different levels, right? So it's more structured, where we split the entire the root object into multiple levels, and each and every level will be having multiple sub levels as well, right? And then if we talk about network model, right, then let's suppose we have a store, right? And again, store again has been divided into multiple three levels, as we can see here: customer, manager, and salesman, right? And then we have third level we have order, but the same table, or we can say the same table, is being accessed by multiple users by multiple levels. As you can see here, order is also a division of customer, or for manager, and for salesman. Then this is what exactly we mean by network DBMS, right? And then if we talk about the relation DBMS, then for example, here we have three tables. We have one table for students, where we have mentioned the ID, name, phone number, and date of birth. And now in next table, what we have is, again, we have ID, but now here we do not have name. Here we do not have phone number. Here we do not have date of birth. Here we simply have one common one common column itself, as you can see here. And then we have different class ID and semester. And again, in third table, what we have is, we have the same common column as class ID, but again, we have different columns again as here as well, right? So if something is common between multiple tables, then that is a part of relational DBMS, as relational database management system, right? And object oriented is when we want to store some different objects, then that is what we'll be looking at as we continue further in our session. All right. So clear on these multiple data types, everyone, on the differences between these multiple DBMS? Please give me a quick information, guys. Clear on this part, everyone? Adarsh, Ahmed, Pranal, Himabindu, Pankaj. Okay, what is RDS and non-RDS? Relational is simply, now as we have seen example just now, Pankaj, let's say when we have something common, there's a relation between multiple tables here. As you can see here, we are using a common column between multiple tables, right? Then this is a part of relational database. And when we do not use this kind of common structure, then that will be part of non-relational database. Clear on this part, Pankaj? Okay, I have another query from Vikas. Okay, there's no specific, or we can say there's no most, if there's nothing as most efficient, there's no most efficient, we can say database here, right? Here we do have multiple service providers, but in terms of type of database, that will depend upon how exactly we want to, or what kind of requirement do we do have, right? But in terms of service providers, like we have multiple service providers for database, right? We have MySQL, we have Aurora, we have Microsoft, we have Teradata, we have Informa. So we have multiple providers, right? And again, then we can have a comparison. But in terms of type of database, that totally depends upon our requirements. So whatever fills our requirement, that will be most efficient for us. Is that part clear, Vikas? Perfect. Thank you so much for the confirmation. We'll be discussing on multiple non-RDS, Pankaj, as we continue further in our session. So non-RDS is simply all the other DBMS type that we have discussed, right? And we'll be giving you multiple examples on what exactly we can uh, we can that can be stored as a use case as a part of relational database as well. All right. All right. So RDS, as we know, is one of the most is widely used if we talk about the cloud platforms, especially for AWS. We'll come down to those points one by one, Ajit. So just to avoid confusion from everyone's side, we'll be discussing step by step. All right. Perfect. Sure, Pranav, we are making sure that it is clear for everyone, because if that is not clear for everyone, again, then there will be no point in having this session, correct? We'll make sure that we are on the point and on time as well. All right. All right, guys. So now let's proceed further. Now, here comes the SQL. Then we have SQL, as we had discussed, is a structured query language. That is a standardized, now it is a standardized programming language which is used for managing relational databases. When we have multiple relation database, then we use SQL language, right? And when we are using SQL, we can modify databases, we can make changes, like we can add, update, or delete any rows of data. We can retrieve these subsets of information from any database, and along with multiple other functionalities that can be executed, right? And relation database like MySQL, Oracle, MySQL Server, Sybase, again, they all use the SQL structure, right? And then queries and other SQL operations are written as statements, right? For example, when we want to point to any particular row, or we want to insert, that means now these are different commands. These are different commands that can be executed as a part of SQL language, right? If we want to select any element, we want to insert, we want to add a row, we want to update the row, delete, create, alter, drop, truncate. So there are multiple commands which we'll be looking at as we continue further in the session. That means how we can execute these commands, and for what kind of use, for what is the use case of these different commands accordingly. All right. Now, next is we have MySQL. So MySQL is basically a relation database management system. So SQL is a language and MySQL is a database management system for relational database, right? And MySQL is an open source software. It supports multiple storage engines. That means we can now we don't have to stay limited to only one storage engine. We can use multiple, right? It provides multi-user access. That means same database can be accessed by multiple users. So there is no one user access granted. Let's suppose we have an entire team of developers. We have entire team of suppose designers working or developers working, right? That means the access to the same database can be given to multiple users, right? And it is cross-platform supported, so it can work on multiple platforms, right? Now, if we talk about features, then MySQL is really easy to manage. That means anyone not having the we can say anyone not having the core understanding or deep knowledge of SQL, again, they can also use the MySQL server. It simply takes simply a bit of time to get used to the platform, and then we can get started on it, right? It is robust transaction. It supports transaction supports. It is more comprehensive for application development because any application will generate data, correct? Because there is no application that runs without data. There has to be a data storage option available, right? And that's why it is an integral part of any application development. It is also high performance driven. That means it provides the access to the database easily and quickly. The cost of the cost of ownership and the maintenance is also low for MySQL. Here we get a we can say a 24/7 support by the technical team. Let's suppose if you run into any kind of trouble, then we have a complete full-fledged support team to help us out in recovering those issues. And then we have a secure data. That means we can encrypt the data. We can set the level of access. That means what kind of access will be granted to different users. Let's suppose we have different users being granted the right to database, right? So for one user, now we can grant one user the right only to read the data. We can grant the other user the right to only access the data, or suppose only make some changes, but they cannot delete anything, right? So there are multiple level of access. Plus, if we are making the database available for the public, again, we can encrypt it, or we can make sure that okay, they have a limited access, thus making our entire database more secure. It is highly available. That means the chances of failure and non-availability of data is rarely seen in MySQL. And again, it is scalable and flexible. Depends upon a requirement. If you want to store large amount of data, again, we can do that. We can simply scale it up to match our requirements. All right. Now, next is we have MySQL Workbench. So now SQL Workbench is basically used for designing and modeling of database. It's used for developing on top of SQL language, and then it is also used for administration of any server, right? So it's a tool offered by MySQL Workbench, right? So what we can do is, let me share this link through which we can get started. So if you want, we can install this MySQL Workbench. So here we have so here we can simply Google it up. So we have MySQL Workbench, and MySQL Workbench is available for different platforms. So if you're using Mac, if you're using Windows, we can use this. So here, let me share this link with everyone so that every one of us can download this. Here you go. So you can all have the access to to this link that I've shared here with you all, guys. Okay, I have a query from Vikas. So if our SQL file is deleted, then how recovery from the failure? How we can recover from failure, as you told, high availability feature. We'll be discussing those parts, Vikas, so we can take a backup as well, right? Let's suppose our entire database has been corrupted. We lost some data. I have lost the access to the data here, right? Again, now if we are using MySQL, we can take a backup as well, so that if we want, if something has happened on a server, if our entire database has crashed, has been corrupted, then we can create a new database, and then we can import the entire table, the entire data that we have already exported as a backup, right? So there are multiple ways of doing that. We'll discuss all of those things one by one as we continue further in our session. Is that part clear? Perfect. Thank you for confirmation. And guys, do we all have the link that I have shared? Please give me a quick information. Do we all have the link for the MySQL workbench that I have shared with everyone? Sure, Chandan. I'll have the support team confirm the same to you as well for its availability part. Perfect, Vikas. Thank you for the confirmation. Swati, Sahil. All right, so here we have this link, guys. So what we can do is we can click on download now, and then this will require us, first of all, to create an account with MySQL, right? So here we have to choose the download version that we want to install. If you're using Mac, if you're using Windows, then this will be the version 8.0.16, and here we have the installer. Now, this is not the complete download package. This is, first of all, the installer, just like we get for Visual Basic. So here we have to download this installer, and for downloading it, we first of all we have to create an account with MySQL. In case we have no account, then we can also go and sign it up as well. All right, so you can sign up for this account as well. There are multiple other alternatives also available. Yes, Murli. So there are multiple other alternatives as well available. So we have Rex Texter, we have Py. So there are multiple editors. There are multiple editors that we can get started with. We do have that. For example, let's suppose we have, okay, let me show you some example. Let's say we have piezo.io. So again, we have piezo.io, we have rextexter, we have multiple editors available that we can use to get started. So we have Rollup as well, we have JDoodle, we have Rollax, we have from our AWS and Azure as well that we can use to get started. We have multiple platforms available. Let me share this link with everyone. Just a moment. Let me share this link. Here you go. And during our session, I'll be sharing multiple other online portals as well. Just like we have multiple code editors available online, so same way we have these multiple editors which we can use to get started on customizing or building on top of SQL servers. We have multiple things. So same way we also have for this one as well. Let me share the same link with you as well. So clear on this part, Murli, please give me a quick information. We will be discussing multiple more tools as we proceed towards the end of our session. Because once we have a clarity on the concept on what are different functions, how it is structured, then we'll be using multiple tools as well. All right. Perfect. Thank you for confirmation. Okay, Adarsh, what is the difference between MySQL, and MySQL Workbench? SQL, as we know, is a language. MySQL is the management system, and Workbench is a platform for executing SQL-based commands as a part of MySQL. Clear on this part, Adarsh? Please give me a quick information. Okay, I have a query from Sahil as well. So please share the MySQL configuration file in Linux and also how we need to configure it. Sure, Sahil, by the end of the session, I'll be sharing multiple files with you as well. I'll have the team share it across. All right, so is it clear, Adarsh and Sahil? Perfect. So, okay, I have a query from Sauravendu. So how Oracle database is different from MySQL? These are different providers. Now we have multiple Oracle database that we have. So whatever we are using, okay, it is based from Oracle itself. Like we are using the MySQL service. So again, it's also part of Oracle service that we are using. And as we discussed, different database type has different advantage that we'll be using, that we'll be taking a deeper look as we continue further. What exactly type of database is ideal for what kind of use case? We'll be taking a look into that in detail. All right. Clear on this part, Sauravendu? I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly as well. All right, so let's get started. Let's resume. All right, so now in the meantime, so what we can do is once we have the file system, now once we have created one account on MySQL, what we can do is we can get started, right? So once we have signed up, then we can simply click on download and this will download the installer for us, right? And there are multiple additional services that we have to download. So this will download all the different services for MySQL and the .NET framework and all the other we can say required components one by one, and then we can proceed. So here we can click on next. We can install now. We can, if you want, we can get started with MySQL service as well because currently we don't want to go into complexities, right? So first of all, we want to start with classic MySQL application, and that's exactly what we have to choose. And then these are different ports. By default, which port will be used? So we can go for TCP/IP ports. Then click on next. Again, config type we have to again make sure we do select the development computer. So here we have to set the root command, the root password for our SQL server. So for example, here we set a password here. And here, if we want, we can add user account in here itself. For example, here we want to create one account for us in our name itself. Suppose in our name, suppose we want the username as Adireka. And here we have to set the password for this particular user that we are creating. Click on OK. So now what we have is we have a user, because just like we had discussed, when we start building the database, we can assign either multiple users or we can keep a single user. That totally depends upon us. So if we assign the same access to multiple users, then different users can have the access, and we can define the level of access. That means one user can have the access only to read the data, one can have the access to only write the data, or to read and write both, and but not delete. So it depends upon our requirement. We can change it, right? Now once we have set the user and the password, then we can click on next, and here we can configure the service name. What should be our service name that we want to assign? And then we want to have a standard system accounts for Windows service. And now here we have to apply configuration. That means, again, as you can see, these will be automatically executed as per the application changes here. So we have all the services being run one by one. So now currently it is initializing a database. Now we are starting the server, applying security settings, creating the user accounts, and updating the start menu link. Once this all has been completed, then we can click on finish and then next. So if you want to bootstrap a SQL server, that means from between a SQL application and a different database cluster, then we can do that, or we can simply click on finish. So if you want, we can again bootstrap this, or we can finish it up. So here we can start our SQL setup once the process has been completed. So now we have the SQL Workbench installed and now ready for use on our system. All right. So clear on this part, everyone, how to get started, how to download MySQL Workbench, and how to set it up? Please give me a quick information, everyone. Clear on this part, guys, how to set up, how to download, and how to set up and install SQL Workbench? Thank you for confirming, Venkat, Ajit, Vikas, Adarsh, Murli, Pranali, Pranav. Wonderful. Candy. All right, so I guess it's almost more than 45 minutes now. So let's take a short break here for 5 minutes so that we can freshen up, we can stretch our legs, grab a cup of water or coffee, and let's get right back in 5 minutes. So in the meantime, guys, if you have the access to the system, we all can download and set this up in our system itself, if we do have the access to the system. All right. So let's take a short break here for 5 minutes, and then let's get right back in 5 minutes, shall we? Everyone? Wonderful. Thank you. Hi everyone, can we all please give me a quick information if you all are back from the break so that we can resume? Please give me a quick information everyone if you all are back from the break so that we can resume. Perfect. Thank you so much for the confirmation. Okay, I have a query from Himabindu. So after creating the account in Oracle and post login, how to access the editor to be ready to write the commands? That's exactly what we are resuming with Himabindu. All right. So once we have installed the MySQL workbench, okay. Yes, I am in. And could you please help with above question? No problem, Raj. Show him our windows. So that's what exactly we are resuming with. Now, once we have installed, then this is the home screen that we'll be looking at. Once we have installed and set up MySQL Workbench. Now here we currently have a by default active connection which we can use to get started on our learning journey, right? Or if we already have an application with us, right? And if we want to connect to any existing database, then we can do that, right? Just like you may have seen, we have multiple FTP. We have multiple FTP clients, file transfer protocol. Any idea, anyone, what exactly are FTP? What exactly we mean by FTP, guys? Any ever heard or ever used, ever seen somewhere? FTP, that is file transfer protocol. Exactly, guys. We do have FTP simply means file transfer protocol, right? So what exactly we do using FTP? We simply use an FTP, right? For transferring files across different servers. Exactly, right? When we have a remote server and we want to manipulate files, then we can take the help of FTP clients. Like we have multiple FTP clients, we have core FTP, we have FileZilla that we can use to get to connect to a remote server and then download, upload, and change the file as per our requirement, right? So if we do have, if so suppose let's say when we are working with any existing websites or when we have a table already created with us, right? Then what we can do is we can simply go back and then we can connect to our server. We can connect to our server so that we can start manipulating on top of MySQL. Exactly. So that's great to know, guys. You all have a correct idea on what exactly FTP is. Wonderful. And if we do have a remote access, we do have the access to a remote server, then we can also connect to it and then get started in manipulating its entire data. We can do that, right? For example, let's say we do have the access to any of the server, right? So what we can do is we can simply create, let's say, okay, let me show you how to connect to any of the servers. Just a moment. Let's create one sample account. Just a moment. Hi everyone. Apologies for the break as we had a technical breakdown for the system. So currently we have switched the system. So it's just restarting. Just a moment. And can you all please give me a confirmation, guys, if you all can see my screen and hear me loud and clear? Guys, can you all please give me a quick information if you all can hear me loud and clear? Perfect. Thank you so much for the confirmation, guys. Let me just start. Let us just start sharing the screen again. Just a moment. All right. So currently we have switched our system, guys, because the early system broke down because of technical limitations. And okay, so currently we were discussing, lastly we were discussing on how to get started on top of MySQL Workbench. So we have to, no, since we have switched to Mac now, so we have to set this up on Mac as well. Just a moment. So let's download the same thing for Mac, our Mac system. Just a moment, guys. So here we can have the same, yeah, here we can perform the same thing that we can search for MySQL Workbench. So here we have MySQL Workbench. Let it load. Okay, I have a query from someone. Okay, screen is not yet, you're able to see a screen. Perfect. Thank you for confirming everyone, guys. So here we can have, so here we can click on download now, and this will download the MySQL Workbench for us. So here we have to click on download now. And this might take a couple of seconds to be refreshed. So here we have now for macOS. So as you can see over here, we can click on download, and this will download the DMG file that we can use to get started for Mac. Because as we know, for Windows we have .exe, and for Mac base system we have .dmg file as disk manager. So let's log in. Okay. Okay, this may happen sometimes that it will fail to accept password. That happens with almost every one of us, right? So we always, that's the main, one of the main drawbacks of technology nowadays. We are so much we get so much reliable relied on the technology to remember everything for us, right? And that's when we start forgetting things. I guess this has worked. So now we can click on download now. And as soon as we click on download now, this will start downloading the entire package that we can use to set up the MySQL workbench on our system, right? Okay, in the meantime, it gets set up. Let us continue further. So these are features of MySQL when we had discussed on MySQL Workbench, and now we have different command categories. If we discuss about command categories, and these are what is available as a part of MySQL. So here, first of all, we have data definition language called as DDL. It consists of the commands that can be used to define database schema, right? For example, here in this DDL, we have the commands like create, drop, alter. Then we have data manipulation language called as DML. In this, we deal with those commands that is used for manipulating. That means here we do not create anything. Here we do not delete anything. We simply delete as in now. There's a small confusion that there may be a small confusion here. We do have two commands. We have delete and then we have drop. Any idea or any guesses, anyone? What's the difference between delete and drop? Anyone? Any guess, anyone, guys? What exactly is the difference between draw? And just try, guys. Don't worry about getting it right or wrong. Basically, we use the drop command when we are working with tables. When we are working with tables, exactly. Right, everyone? So delete will delete data and drop will delete the table itself. Exactly, Ajit. Sauravindu, Namrata, Hima Bindu, Murli. Exactly, wonderful. So it's great to see we all are familiar with the concept here. Wonderful. So drop will delete the entire table, whereas delete is for deleting one particular column or one particular data itself, right? And that is a part of DML. That means when we are manipulating data. Next is we have data control language when we want to mainly work with rights and permissions. Then we have grant or invoke when we want to grant some permission or we want to invoke some permission. Then at last we have transaction control language that is as part of TCL. That means here we mainly deal with the transaction of the database. We have commit, we have rollback, and save point as a command line system. Exactly, Vivek. There's nothing like deleting a table. We have to drop it, right? But in normal language, what we say, we want to delete a table. That means we want to drop it. We have to drop it. And when we are talking about deleting, that means we are talking about deleting a data in any row or column. All right. Now, next is we have entity relationship diagram, right? So when we start talking about entity relationship diagram, first of all, let's have something as supervision. We have a supervisor here. We have a supervisor and okay. Let's go to the previous diagram. In one employee, we now these are different columns that we have. First of all, we have name, right? Now, name has first name, middle name, and last name. Then we have birthday, we have serial number, we have address, salary, and the sex of the employee. Now, employee is also related to to whom the employee has been assigned for. That means who the employee's reporting manager is. Then who they work for is also related to department as well. And again, department has again multiple branches as locations, number, and names. Again, we have a control for it, which is again linked to the project. And again, project is also divided into multiple segments called number, name, location. Same way, employee is also dependent upon. Again, we have dependent upon different fields here, right? And that is what we are doing as a part of entity relationship diagram. That means how different data sets, how we have multiple tables, how we have multiple data tables exactly related to each other, right? The same principle that we had discussed for relational database, right? So here we are simply describing how interconnected all of these database are with each other using entity relationship diagram, right? So here what we are doing is here we are first of all here we are discussing on entity and its attributes. For example, first of all we have composite versus simple. So composite attribute is simply can be divided into multiple subparts, right? That means suppose for example we have address, and address can be divided to street address, city, state, and zip, right? And that's how we get again if you want to subdivide street address, again you can have number, you can have street and the house number, right? And that's exactly what we mean by composite. A single value is when we have a single value. Now, if we are talking about single value data attribute, then again it will only store a single value. That means it won't have multiple values stored as a part of attributes, right? Whereas a multi-valued attribute may have lower and upper bounds as well. That means it can have a range. We can say a range that will define. For example, if we are talking about numbers, right? Then users can, let's suppose we do not want to have any wrong number being entered into the database. Then we can define the range of the numbers. That means if you want to have the range can be of any kind. Suppose we want to have if we want to have a 9 number digit, we want to have a 10 number digit to be saved as a phone number, right? Let's suppose when we are talking about the number of orders in terms of e-commerce stores, we also have a column for number of orders that can be assigned. So number of orders should not be of any value greater or less than 0. Again, it will be we are not allowing any back orders so that we can disable that kind of we can disable that kind of entry being entered into the table, right? Then we have stored versus derived. That means attributes are which are already stored, and then from which it is, and again some other piece of information is being acquired. For example, if we know the birth date, right? So if we know the age, we can also know the birth date as well, right? And if we know the exact birth date of anyone, then we can also know the age. Quite possible. Everyone, can you please give me a quick information if it is clear till now? Please give me a quick confirmation, guys, if it is clear till now on different entity relationship diagram that we have discussed so far on single versus multi-value, stored versus derived. Ahmed, Sahil, Sorbendu, Swati, Nabita. Clear on the concept of stored versus derived? Wonderful. Thank you so much for confirming, guys. So if we have one kind of value stored, then we can derive the other value, right? So that's the difference between stored and derived values. And next we have complex attributes. That means which can be represented by grouping composite attribute values, right? By separating the components with commas and then display the multi-valued attributes in between. For example, we are focusing on address as phone, right? So again, we have phone. Again, phone, under phone, we have area code, and then we have phone number, right? Then again, in address, we have what? Street address. Again, in street address, we have number, we have street, and then we have flat number, right? So these are different complex attributes that we can use as a part of our database. All right. And these are different type of entity types. Sets. Now we have types, sets, and keys and value sets as a part of entity relationship diagram, right? For example, let's say we want to store some data for employee. Then we have name, age, and salary. So in here, what we can do is even we can store in the same format. Correct? So here we can store in the same format. For example, let's say when we are storing information, now here these are the top columns of any table, right? So whenever we have declared the top column, we are creating tables. We have to make sure that whatever information we are putting in under those tables, that is also in the same sequence, right? So for example, first of all, we have name column. That means the first piece of information will also be name. It cannot be age, it cannot be salary. Although technically we can add that, but when we are trying to retrieve the data, when we are trying to read the data and make some sense out of it, again, then at that time, we'll be having a really hard time in relating what piece of information belongs to which group, right? And it will be completely messed up. So here what we have done is we have stored the name, then we have stored the age and the salary as per a requirement. And it can be on any format. It can be 34K, it can be 34,000, depending upon how we have saved it, right? Same way for companies, what we have is we have name, we have Dallas, and then we have name, headquarters, and the owner of the employee itself, of the company itself. All right. Next is we have different data. So we have candidate key, super key, primary key, alternate, and foreign keys. So these are mainly 5 different keys that is a part of relation database, right? Okay, before we move forward, clear on these part, guys. Sets, keys, values, and set and entity relationship diagram. Clear till now? Please give me a quick information, everyone. So clear on this part, everyone. Please give me a quick information, guys. All right, now let's proceed further. So here we have multiple type of keys available as a part of our database. So first of all, we have candidate, we have super key, primary key, alternate key, and the foreign key. Now, first of all, okay, I have a query from someone. Yes, Ajit, we have multiple more. We can read more. We can read more. So by the end of the session, I'll be showing multiple reference links with everyone so that we can use it as a reference in order to learn more about whatever we have discussed so far. All right. So I'll be sharing multiple links with everyone so that we can use it as a reference. Perfect. Don't worry, because we won't be wrapping up the session until unless we have completed it. So that's why we will make sure that we have discussed everything that needs to be discussed before we wrap up the session. All right. Now, these are different type of keys that we have available as a part of relation database. So we have candidate key. Candidate key is basically a unique identifier. That means if we know about the employee number, then again we can fetch the information for any employee, right? Because employee name can be same, employee state can be same, country can be same, age can also be same, but the unique identifier, that is for the candidate key, that can be used to fetch any piece of information, right? Super key is basically the combination of multiple keys. For example, let's say we know the employee number and the name, then again we can use this to fetch the information, correct? And candidate key can also be employee phone number, because phone number is also unique. So two employees cannot have the same phone number, and that's why it is a unique key out there, right? So again, then we have primary key. Primary is basically when whatever is common between different elements. For example, let's suppose we want to fetch all the employees from a particular state, then we can use the primary key for that. And same way for alternate. Just a moment. Currently, we have integrated this. So currently, this is being executed as an SQL workbench, right? So as we can see, a candidate is basically the set of attribute which is unique for identifying any particular tuple, right? Next is we have super key. So super key is basically a candidate key itself, right? But again, vice versa, it will not be true. Next is we have a primary key, which can be uniquely used to identify any particular tuple, right? That means like we have discussed for the phone number as well. Then we have alternate keys. That means the candidate key other than primary key is called as the alternate key itself, right? That means as we discussed, it cannot be vice versa, right? And that's why these are a part of alternate keys. And foreign key is which has value same as the value already present with some other attributes, right? That means if let's suppose we have a foreign key which belongs to some other table, right? And then we have, and that's why we have it belongs to a relation where it corresponds to any attribute for which we have say the same attribute as an external table that we can use as a primary key. All right. Next is we have normalization. So what exactly we mean by normalization is it's simply a technique which a company or which any organization can use in such a way that the dependency on the data is reduced, right? For example, let's suppose we have this entire database where we have the salutation, the full name, address, movies rented, and category. So this is one particular data set that we want to get started with. All right, let's take a look at if we are the workbench installed. All right, wonderful. Okay, we do not find any particular servers. So now we have to create new one. So here we can simply click on new model itself, new model or new connection. Now basically, okay, so currently we have not started, so we can come back. So basically, when we are working with SQL, we need to have a server. We need to connect to a server. So for example, let's say we already have some kind of services active. Let me showcase you how we can connect to any existing website that we have. Suppose we have any existing website and now we want to connect to that particular website, then we need to have to set up a server in MySQL. Just like we set up servers in FTP. So once we connect to your remote server, we can download all the files from there. Same way we can connect to a SQL server using the remote server, the IP, the port number that we have with us in order to get started. So let us connect to a remote server. Let us fetch one piece of information. So we are connecting to a remote server. Just a moment here, guys. Now to set up a new connection, what we can do is we can open up our workbench again. Let's open up our workbench again from MySQL. Let's restart MySQL. Okay, so in the meantime, it gets set up. These are normal forms. Like, for example, first of all, we have salutation, we have full name, address, we have the list of movies rented. Then second normal form will be when we have entire database should be in a normal form and it should have single primary key. That means here what we have is, here we have ID and then we have the movies rented. That means even though we know ID, then we can fetch the information for salutation, full name and address, because these things are also allocated, these things are also related to the same particular unique identifier, right? That means even though we know the ID, still we can fetch the other details about the person who have rented these movies, right? Because again, these are part of relation database that we have discussed. Then again, we have salutation ID. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we can also focus on the salutation part as a third normal form, right? And then we have the third now. And now if our database is in third normal form, then there would be some kind of scenarios where we may face some kind of abnormalities. For example, let's say we have more than one candidate key, right? Then again we can have multiple divisions in terms of tables. We can have that. Now, next is we have SQL commands. So in SQL commands, we have multiple data types available. First of all, we have numeric data type. That means we can declare values in integers, in small integers. We can have float value, double precision, decimal value. We can have string data type as well, where we can declare data as a character, as a varchar, or as a CLOB. Then we have bit string. Then we can declare in bit or in bit pairing string. Sorry guys. And then we have multiple boolean values. That means we can set it to true, false, or unknown as exactly as per our requirement. Then we have for date and time, and we can also have timestamp values as exactly as per our requirement. All right. Now this MySQL workbench has been set up. So what we can do is here, guys. So we can now here we have the host name. So here we can simply enter the IP address that we have in order to connect to our system, right? So here we can have multiple. So here we can use multiple things. Suppose if we want to connect to our server, then we need to enter our IP address. Then we have the username and password, the same like that we had that we have set up for our MySQL server, right? And then we have to enter the password that we have set up, and then we have now if you want we can also just a moment, and then we can if you want we can also enter the username. Suppose our username is what we have set up. Just a moment. So for example, we want to connect to a simple user, then we can specify the username, and then we can set the password as in keychain. We can set it. Whatever password we have assigned to our username, to our database, we can set it up. Click on OK, and that's how. And again, by default schema, we can set it up, or we can give this connection a connection name. For example, website. And then we can define the port. If we are unsure of the port, we can keep it blank and click on connect. And again, as we can see here, now we have a connection, right? And that's how we can add multiple connections to connect to different websites. Now, if you want to get started, you simply have to double click on this connection, and this will connect. This will ask for the password that we have set up. Okay. Let's see for the password. Okay, we are having some difficulty in the password. But again, as we can see here, if we continue from here, then again here we can get started into getting connected to any particular. Any idea, guys, exactly what we mean by null value here? Anyone? Please give me a quick information, guys. Any guesses on what exactly we mean by null value? PNG columns which do not have any data exactly. So suppose if you want to assign a blank value, that means no value, add a simple void value, then we can define that as a part of null. All right. And these are different data. These are different data definition commands that we can take a look at when we are working with MySQL. So what we have is, first of all, we have create index. So if you want to create one particular index, then we have this command called create index. If you want to alter table, that means we want to modify some kind of table, then we have this command for altering table. If we want to have, suppose let's say we want to drop one table, then we have the drop command. If we want to create one particular schema. That means again we want to create a new schema using SQL. Then we have create schema. If we want to create a new table, then we have new table. Then again, we have columns. That is, we do not want to assign a not null value. We have unique key, we have primary, foreign that we had discussed just now. And then we have drop views. That means if we want to drop on one particular view, like permanently, then we have drop. If you want to drop or delete index, if you want to create a view, that means now when we are creating a view, that means we want to view one particular piece of information. All right. We do not wish to see the entire table, but we want to see a selected area of the table. For example, let's say when we want not, we do have the information about the students, right? But we want to see the information only about their grades, not about their parents' name, not the information about their address or anything. We simply want to show to see the list of students, their name and the grades. That's it. Then we can create a different view for it, right? That we can use as a reference to see that exactly that information that we are interested in. All right. So clear. And again, then we have update command. Then if we want to modify one particular uh, any particular column in any particular table, or we can say cell data, then we can use update. Then we have insert when we want to insert any row into the table, either in between or at the beginning or at the end. Then we do have insert command. Select is when we want to select one particular row or multiple rows, then we can use select, right? And in select we have multiple attributes. That means when we are using where, then we can assign some kind of logics that we select where there is one. But suppose when we have multiple columns, right? We have okay. I'll pay from someone. Okay, Sahil, drop is used for table. If you want to drop entire table here, then we use drop. Delete is when we want to delete any particular command, then we use delete. You know these two parts? And truncate, we use basically when we want to clear out the entire row. We do not wish to delete the row, but we simply want to clear the data present in it, then we have truncate. Clear on this part, Sahil? Perfect. Thank you for the confirmation. Okay, guys, can you all please give me a quick information if you all can see my screen and hear me loud and clear? Perfect. Thank you so much for the confirmation, guys. And now when we open up the SQL workbench, what we can see is now once we have connected to any schema, that means once we get connected to any of the operators, is what we can see is this will be the dashboard that we'll be looking at. All right. So first of all, here we have the editor. Here we have the snippets tab. Here we have the output. That means whatever we are writing code as a part of SQL, we'll be seeing the output for it. And here we have the schemas to select. That means, let's say when we have multiple databases, then we can use this to connect to those, right? Currently, we are not connected to any server, but if we are, then we can see the list of tables being created here, right? Or what we can do is, suppose if we want to create a new SQL file, again we can create that, or for example, and then we can get started on adding multiple commands, right? And then we can start writing multiple piece of codes as a part of SQL, right? For example, let's suppose we already have a table, right? Then again, what we can do is we can write a simple code called select. Now, remember, whenever we are writing any code in terms of SQL, again, let's suppose we want to now if in the table they would have in multiple columns, right? And suppose if we want to select a column named as suppose address, right? So here we can mention address, and then what we can do is next is we want to assign a value to it. Suppose we have address, and now we want to assign a value to it. That means from, let's suppose there are 10 table names, right? Then what we now suppose this address belongs to a table named as student underscore data, right? And if we would have been connected, what this would have been shown. So suppose there were 10 columns available in it. That means this would have selected only one column called address, and this would have shown all the data stored in that particular address from the table named as student data, right? So this is one of the basic SQL command that we can use to pinpoint to any one particular column using SQL service. So clear on this part, everyone? How we can get started on writing code on SQL using the MySQL workbench? Please give me a quick information, guys, on this part. Is this part clear, everyone? Candy, Murli, Sahil, Laganthan, Himabindu, Ajit. Perfect. So this way we can get started on adding code or start adding different conditions here. So here we have, suppose if you want to sum any of the elements, right? Then we have sum command, we have count, we have multiple syntaxes as exactly as per our requirements, right? Suppose if you want to calculate something, you want to count the numbers, we have maximum value, we have average, we want to find sum, then we have different commands for it. So we can try every one of these exactly as per our requirement, right? For example, let's suppose now there is one table. There is one table from where we want to find the average of the prices. Okay, I have a question, Molly. So how we can generate the ER diagram to MySQL Workbench? I'll be showing that part, Molly. So currently we don't have the access to a database here, to a simple connection here. That's why we are unable to fetch it up. Else I would have shown you the real example. Not to worry on that part. So by the end of the session, I'll be sharing multiple files with the support team so that they can share across, so that we have a better clarity. Will that be okay, Murli? Just give me a quick information. Perfect. Now, for example, let's suppose we want to now, if we would have access to any table, right? Then suppose we have a column called price, right? Suppose we had a column in a table for pricing, or suppose price itself. We have an e-commerce store, and now we have a table for our list of products. where we have SKU, we have the product title, we have the description, we have the quantity, and then we have price, right? Now, from the entire table, we want to find the average price for each and every product, right? Again, we have a command that we have seen. We can find the count, we can find the sum, average, maximum value, right? So what we can do is we can simply use this particular command called average, and then we need to specify it. That means we want to find the average for which column. Suppose the column name is price, right? And now we want to specify that means this has to be fetched from which table. In case the database is having multiple tables or even single table, we have to specify that, right? Suppose the table name would have been products list. Then what this will do is this will find the average price from the product list and then showcase us the result. All right. So clear on this part, everyone, how we can execute this part, execute these different commands for average, for maximum, for count. Clear on this part, everyone? Please give me a quick confirmation, guys. Perfect. Thank you for confirming, everyone. And these are multiple arithmetic operators that we can use. We can use this for performing calculations. If you want to add something, we want to add, multiply, divide, subtract, or find the modulus. Then we have bitwise operators, then we have comparison, and then we have compound operators. That means if something should be, it is equivalent to the addition and it should be equal to. Then we have multiple compound operators, comparison when we are making a comparison or using the bitwise operators exactly as per our requirement, right? Then we have something as relation algebra. That means we can use these operations that we have discussed just now. We can use a select operation to select one particular table. Then we have project. That means it simply selects columns from the table and then discards the other columns, right? And then we have rename. If we want to rename any column, then we can use the rename command, right? Let's suppose there is some column which we want to rename, then we can perform that function using the rename statement as a part of SQL language, as a part of SQL language. Now here we can set operations. That means we can combine these two elements using these different operation values. So in terms of now, what we are doing is when we are creating union, we are simply combining the two different queries together. When we are using intersect, when what we are doing, we are only keeping the overlapped part. That means something which is common in both the queries. And when we are subtracting it, that means we are subtracting one row from the others, right? That means whichever part is not included. For example, in two columns, we have what? In one column, we have ID, name, and address, whereas in other column, we have ID and rank, right? So whatever is not present, that will be subtracted from the other column. That means we'll be having only ID itself and the rank itself. All right, and that's why we have these one defined as multiple operations. Now cross product is, for example, in table one, we have name, age, and sex of the students. And in another table, what we have is we have ID and then we have department, right? Now, when we are multiplying table A with B, then what will be the result? We'll be getting the name, the age, the sex, the ID, and department as well. That means, in a way, we are simply adding these two columns, adding these two tables together when we are going for product, right? Next is we have nested inquiries. That means if we want, what we can do is we can select, like we had, remember we had done earlier in an example, what we had done in a previous example, what we had done is, if we remember, okay, command is gone. Like we had used the select command, select, and then we have specified select, we want to select, suppose, address, and from which table, suppose address from student details table, where now we can specify one particular condition. That means where, suppose, students where where there is some specific command. They say, let's suppose there are some specific conditions. Let's suppose where the student's name begin with N. The students where their height is this much, where their name is this much, right? Then we can apply these kind of commands as a part of where, right? For example, we want to select where the ID, or suppose where the ID, or where we can have one any particular column where the name is, for example, we want to find everyone who is having the name as Abhishek, for example, Abhishek. Then we can use this kind of syntax. So what we are doing is we are nesting different elements on in one another, correct? And suppose if we want to fetch every piece of column, every row, then what we can do is, instead of being selective to only one column, what we can do is we can use one simple asterisk, right? That means we want to select entire row. That means here we are not being specific. By using asterisk, we mean we want to select entire row, any column from this table where the name is equal to up to Abhishek, or suppose where age is, for example, 16, where age is 16, then we can specify that particular parameter. So clear on the nesting of elements as well, nested queries in SQL. Is it clear on this part, everyone? Please give me a quick information. All right, thank you for confirmation, guys. And next is we have relation algebra and relation calculus. That means we can use multiple binary operators. We can use for joining any elements. We have natural join. That means if now here we have three tables. Here we have employee and one table for department. In employee we have name, ID, and department name. Whereas in department we have the department name and the manager name, right? Now, since these two tables are having the same column as department name, right? So, and when we are joining these two different column tables, and what we are getting is the common is, now here we don't get two columns for department name. Since these both are common, this will remain as it is. And now we have employee name, ID, department name, and the manager, right? That's exactly how we can join any two particular column here. All right, as a part of SQL database that we can join any two tables together as a part of SQL command. We can do that. All right, and join will be dependent upon how exactly we want to use. All right, then we have conditional join. That means if we want to apply some kind of conditions, that means in table A we have ID, we have sex, and then we have marks. And in B we have ID, we have sex, and then we have marks. Both these columns are together, are almost identical, right? Now we want to combine, we want to join the tables where
The marks of A is greater than or equal to the marks available in table B. Marks available in table B. Then we can use these conditional operators. Then we can use these conditional operators as a part of SQL command, right? So wherever the marks for A is greater than B, then only it should be joined, right? And that will be our condition. As you can see, that will be the result that we'll be looking at. So here we have multiple examples of join. We have inner join, we have full join, left join, and right join based on the condition that we have, right? For example, now let's suppose we use inner join. For example, inner join is used when you want to select all the rows from both the tables as long as there is match between the columns. Like we had discussed in the earlier example, right? So if one column matches, then only we can join these two different columns as a inner join as well. We can do that. Same way we have full join. If the columns are again, we want to combine these two all together, even though something is not common. Then we have left join. That means we want to join the left table with the other, or vice versa. Then we can use these joins. Next we have views. So views in a single table, it is derived from other tables, right? That means whatever query we are performing, it will simply return those particular views. Let's suppose we are combining these two tables together, then we get a single view out of it. As we can see here. And then we have multiple view commands. We can create a view by simply specifying the command as create view, and then we can specify the view name as. Then we have to use a select. That means which column we want to create the view with, and then we have to set to use from. That means the table name from where this view has to be created. Where the condition. That means we have to specify the condition. All right. Next is we have triggers. So triggers are basically used as we are again. That means here we are defining simple condition. That means here we have changing the data by using insert, update, or delete statements. Here we are changing the data using these particular statements. As you can see here. So here, if you want, we can insert before, we have after insert, before update, after update, or before delete, right? That means this will be activated based exactly on where we want to use them. And last, we have transactions. So transactions are basically based on, so transaction we can say simply is used to divide tasks into single execution unit, right? So basically, when every transaction begins with a specific task and ends with it as well, we can group them together into one particular transaction, right? That means it will have only two results, either success or a failure, right? So I'll be showing multiple use cases for it as well with the team so that the same thing can be shared across as a transaction-based scenario. And at last, we have timestamps. So timestamp is based on returning any value in terms of date and date time, right? That can be stored. Now, this can be highly useful when we are recording data for the last time the user has logged in, right? Now, you may have seen this in real life example as well. Whenever we are logging in into any dashboard, we may have seen information about our last logged in. Ever seen that? Anyone? When we log in into some specific applications, we also see information like last login, and it contains the information when we have last logged in, including our date and time as well. Ever seen that? Right, Candy? So again, these are what timestamps, right? Banning app or or it can be used for any dashboard as well, right? Especially for enterprises. Now, this is highly useful for enterprise application where the user needs to know, where we can showcase the user when was the last time they have logged in, when they had logged in. So again, these different timestamp can also be saved as a part of our database. So again, we can select based on timestamp, and then we can mention the timestamp. Suppose we want to see the list of users who are active on this and this date. Then we can choose accordingly, right? For example, let's say we want to see that piece of information. That means select timestamp. Now in timestamp, we want to specify, that means we want to see the list of users who had logged in on 6th June 2019 from, suppose, employee attendance. Suppose here we have a table called employee attendance, where suppose where the work hour, suppose let's say we had where suppose number of hours they have worked for, right, is equal to at least 6 hours. So again, we can use a timestamp to create this kind of customized view for us. All right, so that's it as an introduction for the SQL command here, guys. So any questions so far that you might have on SQL, on whatever we have discussed so far? And again, we thank you for joining for today's session, guys. I know we have surpassed the limit that we had. So although we had covered almost 40 minutes extra than what we had planned for, just to make sure that we do complete whatever we had shared as an agenda, right? And thank you so much all for joining, guys. It has been great connecting with you all for last almost 2.5 hours now. And I'll be sharing multiple documents. Okay, so team will be sharing multiple documents with you as well post this session. And also you'll be getting an NPS feedback form, guys. So please do fill in that NPS feedback form, because that will be the rating based on your training experience that you had in this entire session, right? So in case of any you have faced any kind of technical difficulties, then we'll be getting a separate NPS feedback form. But the one that we'll be getting just after the session will be based on your training experience that you had in the last 2.5 hours. So thank you so much for joining for today's session here, guys. It has been great interacting with you all, and hope to see you all soon in our next session. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great day. Take care. Bye bye.